In this episode, I talk with Sandra Beaulieu about creativity and horses and how you can express your own creativity with your horse, even if you don't think you're a creative type. So here we go, episode 182, Creativity with Sandra Beaulieu. Hi, I'm Karen Rohlf, and welcome to Horse Training in Harmony. This podcast is about you making progress with your horse in a way that you both can love. It's about learning how to move and be in harmony. Because yes, you really can develop a horse to be both athletic and happy. When we show up as our best selves for our horses will show up for us. So, let's get started. Sandra Beaulieu is a creative equestrian that combines her passion for dressage, equine art, and musical freestyle to inspire and help others have fun with their horses. She is an author, and she also performs with her horses at special events like Equitana, Equine Affair, and Breyerfest. She believes that positive energy, love, and creativity are the key ingredients to create a strong bond with your horse. She's quite unique in what she has to offer, and she really truly is an artist with her horse, around her horse, and along with her horse, as her horses participate quite fully in the process. I've gotten to know Sandra personally over the last year or so, and we co-presented at an event this past year, and I think you're really going to enjoy meeting Sandra and hearing what she has to offer. Hi, Sandra.
Hello.
We've been talking about having you come on the pod and be a guest, I don't know, probably for a year now.
I know. I was in your mastermind for a whole year, so I got to know everybody on the team, and you got to know a lot about me too.
Yeah. So I'm fine. I'm glad we finally were able to make this happen. I think since we first talked about it, you've moved and you've created so much new stuff, and so maybe this is just the perfect time to have you on here. So yay. Let's see. Last time I saw you was at the World Equestrian Center in Ocala. We were both fellow presenters at the Iberian Showcase, which was super fun.
I know. It was so fun. I loved it. And I was listening to your podcast episode about the performance and your behind the scenes of preparing your horse. And you're so similar to what I do too. I like overdo it. I'm like all the little things and like get there really early and make sure your horse is super comfortable in the stall and take them for walks. And, it's so nice. I mean, the horses are so lucky because when you go to events like that, you see the other side of it and you realize how many people are not doing that. And you're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. I was like, oh yeah. Every time I think, oh, what's so special about what I do? Like, oh, and and Natia, I mean, you do a lot of performances in front of people, and I just don't that much anymore, and I haven't competed. I just knew Natia like lives in the quiet bubble of my paradise at home and doesn't get out much, and then to go in that circumstance, that kind of venue and everything. So I just wanted to be really fair to her, and since I was doing it bareback and bridleless, I thought, it might be good to have a calm horse.
Yeah, you did awesome. I had so many people comment afterwards, and like you were always in the top 3. Like Rovi, my boy, and your mare were like some of the favorites. And the cool thing is we weren't really always doing necessarily the most fancy thing. It was just like people can really tell when you love your horse and you have that connection with your horse and you're having fun. So I think that's really cool. That's given me a lot of confidence over the years, not necessarily always riding the fanciest horse, but when you have a partnership with a horse, people like not even non-horse people can really tell. And that means more to me than doing necessarily all the fancy things. So
yeah, I agree. And I think you went after me, and I remember like respectfully bringing Natia back to the barn and making sure she's okay, and then like running to try to get back and catch yours. And I came in to see the last part of it, and then it's to Beauty and the Beast, and you get off and you like kneel in front of your horse. I'm like, okay, I'm crying now.
I know
I mean, you did that in like 1 minute. I'm
he knows
like,
how
it
to
was so pretty.
gives kisses. So I people love it. It's the simplest thing. I have a big skirt and I do a little twirl and I kneel down and I make my kiss noise and he reaches his little neck out and gives me a kiss and everyone just loves it. It's so cute. And he,
Yeah.
of course, likes to do it too. But just cute little things you add in over the years that just it just is the crowd loves it.
Yeah, yeah. And I think what you said, that you clearly love your horse. And yeah, you and I think we're the only ones who went out and hit the trails. I'm
Yeah.
like, can we get our horses out of the stalls? Like Sandra, there's trails. I'll
Yeah.
put that in air quotes, there's trails. And yeah, so we went out on an adventure and found some beautiful, beautiful little paths to go on. And yeah, helped our horses pull the Spanish moss off the trees and
It was
just had a
fun.
good time.
They loved it.
Anyway, so I'm happy to have you here, well, for lots of reasons, but I think you're just really, really unique. And in stalking you on your website and reading more about you, the art background, acting, modeling, to see you in some YouTube the videos you posted, like, look, she's in a commercial.
Yeah.
Modeling, design, like designing your own jewelry and clothes, and then of course the riding. And you currently now do like art on horseback. You teach your horse to paint. You do fantasy photo shoots. You do musical freestyles, and you teach and you train. So I wanted to talk about some of the details of those things definitely later on, and how you help people with them. But I'd love to hear a little more of the story of how all these interests sort of evolved. How did that start, and how did you manage to do all those different things? So many people would be happy if they find one thing that they can love and do and pour their heart into. And yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I definitely have the typical, like, as a kid, you fall in love with horses and it's like very evident that you have the horse bug, and you're obsessed. And so I was definitely obsessed. I rode all the time. I was very lucky to ride in a program where, you pay for the month and you ride as much as you want and you learn how to train, you ride all these different horses. And I was really lucky that trainer did like this little like equestrian theater on the side, or incorporated it into the lessons. And we competed in dressage, but every year we would have this like almost like a recital, and we would ride to music. We had costumes, we painted the arena like a theater, and I used to teach the quadrille classes for all the kids, and it was so much fun. But in my mind, I'm very kind of type A. So I was like, I wanted to go to the Olympics. I was like, I am going to compete Grand Prix. I'm going to be a judge. I'm like super serious. And I like rode and I was very serious. Like, can't imagine. I was always like, had like a serious face all the time. And I was on a schedule and I like rode 10 horses a day. And I was like very driven and that's all I did. But I was always stressed out. I'd never like competing was always very stressful, trying to chase scores, and I never had any fun with that. The only time I ever had fun riding was when we did our equestrian theater, which I actually still was a little stressed out because I had all this pressure in my mind of what I needed to do. But that's through high school and in my 20s and whatever. And then I was going to compete Grand Prix, and the horse I was riding actually colicked and died. And
Oh.
then another horse I was riding that year also like died of a tragic thing. And it just all these things happened. And then I got bucked off and I was injured really badly. And so the whole year was like, it jumped me off track of like where my trajectory. It took a lot to get me off that trajectory of like trying to go to the Olympics and be serious. So alternately, this whole time I've always been an artist and I had my own little artsy things on the side, but I kind of kept them really separate. And then when the horses, I was basically like, I was having an identity crisis. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I saw these videos. You probably know Sabine Shu Carey. She
Yes.
like used to perform a lot with Frisians. And I was just like, wow. I was like, that's why I'd never ridden a Frisian before. I'd ridden thousands of horses and never ridden a Frisian. And I was like fascinated with like training horses for the movies and like things like that. And so I got inspired by some of her videos and I was like, okay, like if I continue riding, I'm going to perform with a Frisian. That's what I want to do. And like 3 weeks later, I found my Frisian, and it's all like meant to happen and fate. And he was my heart horse, but he was really hard and he was really abused and difficult. And so that was a whole journey on its own. But he taught me a lot of how to just basically go into myself as like, what is true to me? And it was really hard. It was a very hard transition to go from one thing where you think you're expected to do something, as far as like as a trainer, like as a dressage trainer, you think you need to be one way and you need to be in control and you need to know everything, you know what I mean? And then go to, okay, now I'm a dressage trainer, but now I'm like artsy fartsy and I do liberty and I do, tricks and like, and then I just got to the point where I didn't care anymore. So gotta,
I love how you use a different voice for the dressage trainer and then the artsy fartsy person.
Yeah, totally. I mean, people
I
who know
get
me
it.
now, I'm usually very happy. And I realized, like, it was so funny when I was growing up, my friend Lydia was an amazing rider, and she didn't have any expectations, and she would just kind of giggle and ride her horse. And she rode this little Arabian who had no talent whatsoever. I'm on an actual warm blood and I am training every day and I am like serious and I'm gonna get the scores I need. We'd go to a show and I would totally bomb all the time. I just had so much stress on myself. And then she'd just like, la, 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 go right in on this little horse and get like a pretty good score for him. And it really taught me that like horses like light energy. They like it when you laugh. They know what your intentions are. They know what you're thinking. They know if there's all that stuff going on between you and them. So now I like really talk to my horse a lot, and I laugh and I make jokes and I listen to music, and most of that is not necessarily what you're saying. It's just the energy. The horse can feel it. And but then you can also go on the flip side of being I can get a little too excited and a little too energetic. So then it's like, okay, let's go to nappy time, and now I'm your calm, in kindergarten teacher, and we're just gonna, walk around the ring and no big deal. You kind of like you're an actor a little bit, as long as you feel what you're doing, So I know all this, but it's just kind of fun, to be able to explain it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's cool to have you related to acting because, we think about being with horses, we have to be authentic. But the reality is we have to be different people for different horses and in different moments so that we can meet them really where they are. And, depending on who you are, it can feel uncomfortable being that lighthearted and fun, or it can feel uncomfortable being that like, hey, this,
Right,
or, to be able to be to a horse, like, I got you, even if you're freaking out on the inside and you're scared. So no, I think we all are acting in order to be who the horse needs us to be. So,
right. But
yeah.
horses will know when you have to be clear, because the horses will know what's under the surface, right? They're a mirror to our fears. So you could act like you're all confident, but if you're really like scared to death, the horse will know it, for sure. So you have to kind of like act your way to feel it, but
Yeah.
like, or at least just feel like you have different personas that you can like tap into.
Well, maybe that's the key, because it's because I definitely agree with the authenticity. It's the different personas to be able to flow from. And so I feel like I can be like with my horse Ovation. He's like a Labrador Retriever, so I'm kind of with him in that mode. But then for another horse like Atomic is so different, and I have to be, a different version of myself. Maybe that's it, right? So it's all parts of me, but to be able to have that range and that awareness, and I'm sure through your creativity and to be able to like step outside yourself and like, oh, now I'm going to be this other way. I think it's super helpful to have that kind of flow.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and it's never ending. That's why riding is like mastering. You're not only mastering your body language and then your energy, and then staying in the moment. And then on top of that, it's different all the time and every horse is different. So, and then you kind of get stuck I get like at our, as we get older, we kind of get stuck in a rut. Like, so then sometimes it's fun. Like I'll actually pretend I'm someone else. Like, oh, I'm that trainer over there. Like, what would I do if
Mhm.
I never met this horse before in my life? My own personal horse. I used to get on him and be like, okay, I'm this trainer today. And like sometimes I would get a completely different reaction. It'd be really interesting information, not always the best information or positive, but like it kind of gives you like parameters of like what
Mhm.
your horse needs. Cause you'll notice like a kid will ride a horse and it bops around totally chill and like, all happy. And then like the trainer or the owner adult amateur rider gets on it and the horse is like all blocked up and grinding its teeth and the rider doesn't even maybe look like he's doing anything wrong. It's just the energy's different, so it's
Exactly.
kind of interesting, to have that mentality a little bit.
I actually use a technique for, I've used it a lot for people who are not confident or second guessing themselves. Like they're not afraid, but they're just second guessing themselves. And the horse is kind of needing someone to go, yeah, that's it. Or let me help you. And so I do this thing where I say, now, impersonate, pretend you're an actress and you're playing the part of a famous Olympic rider
Mhm.
and British. I always pick British. I don't know why. You're a famous British, former Olympian, and now you're doing a demonstration teaching the basics on this horse, and I want you to narrate. I want you to teach me.
Yeah.
It changes everything.
That's great. Yeah, no, I can totally see that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then so it's like, and then it just goes, and now, well, that didn't work, and so now I'm going to do this. Like it doesn't have to be perfect. It's a teaching moment. Oh my goodness, yeah, and I love what you said about there was a moment. There's a moment you said where you just stopped. You didn't care anymore. Can you
Yeah.
talk more about that? Because I have my interpretation of that. But I'd
Yeah.
love to hear you. Like at some point, you just didn't care anymore. Like what was it that you weren't caring about anymore that made the difference?
Yeah, I think I got to the point where I was with my particular horse and he was so difficult and I felt like I was being humiliated all the time. Like, not even like in front of people, but just like at the barn. Like I'd try something, it wouldn't work. I'd try another thing and it wouldn't work. Like I don't even know necessarily an example, but it seemed like everything I tried to teach him did not work until I finally just kind of was like, well, that did, I give up. And then like a month later, he just kind of do it on his own. And I'm like, wait, that's what I was asking for. What did I do? Or how can I backtrack and put a cue on that? And it was just like, he just kind of taught me how to think a lot differently. And then I was finally like, it took years. Like I had him for over 10 years and it was still at the end, he was still always doing that to me as far as like, oh, you think you know what you're doing? You don't, like we got to think differently about this. So, whenever I would just kind of like not have expectations and just kind of try to read him as best as I could and not have a timeline and whatever, like then it would like happen later, so it taught me how to kind of let go and be like, okay, I can have goals and stuff like that, but let's go more in the flow and things sometimes magically happen or something spontaneous. Like he did so many tricks that I was able to put a cue on that I would have never thought to teach him. He made them up. And then I was like, oh, that's cool. Since we already had a language of how to train tricks, he would make something like he did this really cool thing where he wiggled his lips and I was able to get him to do it on command. It was the funniest thing. And he'd never done that ever before. Like it wasn't like something he did in the barn all the time. It would just happen spontaneously out of like like we were performing at the equine affair, like in this little trick training demo. And he just like put his head up and shook his lips. And I was like, oh my gosh, like what was that? And so then like it was just kind of neat. He just like did things like that. So it took me to a whole different place. But people started to really respond to our relationship and they could tell that he was tricky, but they could tell that he loved me and that we had this thing together and they loved his story. So I really learned that like people want to connect to the realness of the connection and it's not so much about the fancy stuff about being perfect and having him show at a certain level or whatever. It's more about is the horse looking like he's having fun? And he's only going to have fun if I'm having fun. So I'm like, okay, well, let's have some fun, you know? So it kind of, at that point, then I started to get more confident in just doing my own thing, and instead of doing what other people thought I should do. But I had a lot of anxiety riding my horse in front of other people, or trying to learn the tricks or something with people watching that had opinions, and people who were watching that I had ridden with before and didn't know all this stuff, and they had opinions about it. And I'm like, it was like really, it was really like hard physically, mentally. You know, I had my horse, but I just felt like I was in this little, I had to like hide, you know. So then, you know, it was much better once I was able to just kind of be like, I don't care what you think. Yeah, my horse and I'll do our own thing, and you know, whatever. And then I started to get attention, you know, good attention for it, and that boosted my confidence. So it helped.
Well, thank you for sharing that. It's something that I can relate to that, and I know a lot of people out there can relate to that feeling of, people watching and the standard, and everybody has a different standard and slightly different rules and things that they're looking for. And time and time and time again, I learned the same lesson of just drop expectations and not worry so much about shoulds, and just be there with my horse, and between my horse and me, like, what are we going to do? And to be here. And I think it's a really tricky dance to do that and sort of go somewhere and aim to do something specific, right? To advance somehow in your training, or to build on things, while at the same time, sort of being unattached. It's very Buddhist, to be unattached to the outcome while you're doing something and trying to be excellent at it. And you are excellent at plenty of stuff. So it's really interesting to hear you talk about that.
Well, it's kind of like definitely the art on horseback that I do. That is very much like what you're talking about, because performing with that, I mean, I did it for years, just hiding by myself. I didn't want to, I was like, it's not good enough. He's not doing high enough movements, or it's not in my mind. It wasn't as good as it could be. So I didn't put myself out there for a really long time. And then finally I started doing it a little bit. And, I was like, oh my God, like creating art in itself in motion on the horse. And I paint a horse while I'm riding the horse. And then you're performing. It's like everything goes wrong, basically, or
can I stop you right there? I want to interrupt you, because you're kind of just like, yeah, I do this thing. So I want to make sure it's really clear. So Sandra you do so many different things. So you were talking about tricks and things like that. So Sandra has taught her horses how to paint. So you have one thing that you do where you teach your horse, holds a paintbrush, gets the paint, puts it on the canvas, and they're actually, some of them are, I think, pretty darn gorgeous. And you have a course, like you put together a course, and you can find on your website where you can teach your horse how to paint. But then what you kind of just casually said here was like, yeah, I'm creating art on horseback. So she's got this like huge canvas, 9-10 feet tall or something, and she's riding her horse with a paintbrush in her hand and riding past the canvas, or piaffing next to the canvas, or, somehow being near and as she's riding, she's painting and creating a painting of a horse while you're riding a horse. So I just wanted to make sure everybody really got that. And, and I remember when we were playing in the business mastermind, at one point I'm like, Sandra, do you know, because you were saying, oh, I don't really want to show anybody this. And I was like, Sandra, do you know anybody else like in the whole world that does that? She's like, no. I'm like, yeah, I think you should do that in public more. Anyway, so I interrupted you, but go ahead. Now people have a picture of what this is.
Yeah. And it's actually, if you are familiar with working equitation, It's kind of similar to that, like the way the horse is ridden with one hand. I ride my horse bitless too, with a little cross under bitless bridle, and he's the perfect personality. He's not a fancy horse. He doesn't have big trot, fancy suspension. He's really kind of small and compact. And so like his personality is just perfect for it. He loves performing. He's so reliable. So I don't even have to really think about him. He really is like an extension of me. So it's not like I'm like, oh my God, I gotta balance him. Oh, and I gotta do this and I gotta do that. And I gotta do the brushstroke. He's usually lets me just kind of really focus on the painting, and he'll turn and I'll do figure eights and a little flying change and then a halt back up, and he's really good. And I've only done it with him. So it may just end up being something special that we shared together. I'm not sure, it's tricky. It's not going to be something I just do with every horse. But when I do the art, like a lot of times I would be like, oh, this is what I picture, what I want it to look like. And I would start painting and I'm like, oh my God, that didn't land where I wanted it to, or that didn't go where I wanted to. Oh my goodness, it's going to look terrible. Da, 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 da. And so then I was like, okay, we need to just work with the mistakes here. And so then I'd use my skirt and I'd stand there and rub something out, and so I paint all over me, and then I'll like use water and throw water at it to make it drip. And then I was like, okay, let's just take the first brush strokes and see where they land, and then try to go from there. So like total adaptation to the entire thing as it's going. And that's something that my Frisian horse, when I did the Liberty, it was like every day he had something like, oh, today I don't feel like I want a Spanish walk today, even though that's his favorite thing yesterday. So we would be in a performance, and and I have an idea of what we're going to do, but usually in the moment, especially if you're at Liberty and doing bridleless, things definitely don't ever go always the way you plan it, because you don't have as much fine tuning. So you have to have like, basically, this is routine A. And then if this happens at this moment, I have two other options. And then I'm going to go down this road, and then we're going to ride this routine instead. And we'll change this over here. But you have to be so in the moment with your horse. Like if you're too much stuck in the routine, or too much like thinking about what everyone else is thinking, then you're just gonna freeze and get all upset. But I also learned you got to just smile even if something goes wrong.
Because nobody else knows what your plan was.
I mean, hey, if you fall off, as long as you're not hurt, just take a bow and get back on. The audience thinks it's hilarious. So, I don't. Sometimes like the horse, like if he wouldn't do what I wanted, I just kind of turn to them and be like, oh, well, kind of have that cute face. And then I kind of storm off like I'm acting like I'm mad. And everyone just thought that was funny. And so then it becomes like, okay, horses are real life animals. You can't, that's the difference. Like you watch some performances and the horse is literally doing exactly what the person wants him to do, but they have a look on their face, and that they're, not there's no option for them. There's no option to do the dance with you. It is just, I do what I'm told kind of thing. So most people can sense the difference. And so I would prefer if my horse had an opinion sometimes.
I'm similar. I love that. Take the first brush stroke and then, see where you go from there. I think that can apply to paintings, and when you come out and you feel, you think of what your horse was yesterday, and so you can make some assumptions and have a grand plan. And then sometimes they show you in that first brush stroke what they feel like doing that day, and maybe it's different, but sometimes you can find something you wouldn't have found if you just did the original plan.
Yeah, for sure. And I definitely do believe things happen for a reason. And if you follow your intuition, the more clear you are, you will come to what you want. The journey just might be very different than you expect, but that should be the fun part, I think. And the more you start to like that, it's a little bit easier to not feel like a failure all the time. So
And that's a good thing.
yeah. I mean, so you could be doing something really incredible, but you get in your own world, and someone else might think, oh my God, I could never do that. But then in your world, you're like, oh, it could be better. It could be better. It didn't do this. He didn't do that. And then, and you don't enjoy it for what it is. So I always when I get frustrated, I'm like, okay, if I was 7 years old, when I was 7 years old and I was obsessed with horses, like if I saw me right now, I would be very excited and impressed. So I'm like, that's all I need. Like I go to Breyerfest and perform with my horse, and I'm like, that's my goal. I'm like, I just want to inspire these kids to be like, to see something that they've never seen before, so that they know the possibility as the, to see me paint on horseback, like them, they're lucky they're seeing it when they're 10 years old. So then maybe their thought process will be a little more open and a little bit more creative as they get older, whereas I didn't see that when I was a kid. So, it's just kind of that's sort of more of like, the purpose of what I like to do is just to inspire people to be more creative in their own way. They don't have to do it the way I do it. Just do it the way they want, and be courageous to try it, definitely takes a lot of courage.
I love that. And I love the feeling of like, if I was the 7-year-old version of me, I mean, that's something I try to do. Well, I don't even have to try that hard. I'll be riding around and I'm like, this is so freaking cool. Like how lucky, anytime you're on a horse, how lucky am I?
I know.
I'm on a horse.
Yeah.
What's that song? I'm on a boat. We have to make one for horses.
Yeah.
So a huge theme through through your being, I guess I could say, is this creativity, right? If there was, I think, one word, if I had to pick one word to describe you, it would be, creative or creativity. You are practicing creativity in so many ways, and I think creativity is something that I've heard people say. It's one of those things where people are like, oh, I'm a creative person. And then other people are like, oh, I'm just not a creative person.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, everybody is creating all the time, right? Everybody is creating their day and creating their experience in so many ways. So, what would be your advice for somebody who maybe would describe themselves as not a creative person, or, oh, I wish I could be creative? Like, what are some things you could say to them to help bring out and maybe the first question is, why is creativity important, or how is it important in your horsemanship and training? And then how do we do it if it doesn't come
Yeah.
naturally?
I think that the nice thing about, creative goals is that it gives you something different. Like it's not just what everybody else is doing. Because if you don't resonate with competing, or you don't resonate with a certain type of training, and you just want to have fun and be deepen your bond with your horse, there's so many options now. And that's kind of where the creativity is like, maybe you're not necessarily creative like an artist, but you want to be creative. Like maybe you'll ride working equitation, or maybe you'll try like, Western dressage or freestyles or something. Like, I think that most people, like the people that say they're not creative, they usually have a secret dream or goal. Like, I want to, do a photo shoot and my horse be a unicorn and I'm a princess or something, like, and they might not say it out loud, but usually people have something that they're like, oh, I wish I could do that. Right. So I feel like that's kind of your intuition saying, go that direction. You might not necessarily end up at that particular area, but if you just kind of explore and play with things, things that you're interested in, that's kind of more what creativity is. It's not necessarily like, when I had the inspiration to combine painting and art, it took me 2 years before I actually tried it. I had to think about it, and like, I'm like, I don't know if that's even a thing, or how could I do that? And like, so it was like perplexing, but it was challenging. So, something where like you may have no idea how you're going to get there, but you just have an idea, and like you just kind of go that direction, and just let yourself play with it and follow people that you resonate with, and not necessarily like, if you have a bad feeling about something, or you're just really stressed out about it, then, try different things. And I think that that's more the creativity. I don't think people can be just as creative, you know, in a like a competitive environment, you could be kind of like creative how you blend different techniques together, and looking at the horse from a different perspective, and doing the groundwork and do it, kind of like what you do with the dressage naturally. That's creative because you're not just thinking in one tunnel, in one avenue. So, it doesn't have to be art, and it doesn't have to be something that's, you know, seen usually as creative. I mean, even just making fun videos with your horse is creative, Anything that's hard, I think, is creative.
Well, I was going to say problem solving.
Yeah.
Right. So anytime that you've got a problem, so it could be like, how am I going to get this horse to do this, on this kind of day and keep his attention? Like anytime you're just being a little creative, you're trying something different, a different warm up. Let me try a different warm up. Well, you just created a different warm up. Let me do this first and then that. So I think it helps to point out to people when they're already being creative, because I'm sure people, if they don't think they're artistic, but they're probably solving a million problems a day and not realizing like that is a part of creativity.
Yeah, and not getting stuck. Like, I mean, we all get stuck, but if you go like, if you just think the way you've done it is the way it should be done, that's why it bothers me, trainers who they won't adapt to the horse. They just like, well, that horse doesn't fit my method, so you need to get a different horse, or that horse, something's wrong with the horse, right? Instead of really exploring, is there something about my technique that's not working? Or, no one is right all the time. So, but it's very hard to sift through all the information as well. So you kind of have to figure out like what resonates with you, because what might work for one person might not work for you, but it doesn't mean it's wrong for that person. It's not necessarily, I don't want people to feel like just riding one way or feeling a certain way is going to work for everybody. You just have to kind of take bits and pieces of what you like, and then just take little tiny actions towards those things. Because I feel like, most people just get really stuck because they're worried or they don't want to try something. But usually the first few times you try, it's not going to go that great. So just, try again.
Yeah. And that's I think you said, to make sure you're around. So you said something about around other people who are going to welcome creativity, right? And so not be the like, that's not the way it's done, to like just make sure there's an environment where you can try doing things a little bit differently, just for fun, and you might find a way that works even better.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely think finding your tribe is what they say. And I had a hard time finding a good tribe for a long time because I was like, I don't know what I am. So.
Well, you're the kind of person who creates a tribe around you,
right,
for all the other weirdos out there who have paint on their dress when they're riding their horse, or who teach their horse to pick up things, and then wow, we could have them stick it in a bucket of paint and then aim it for a canvas and all these things. So yeah.
I love it. Well, that's what was fun when I was in the mastermind, and like, it's all, your group of people is very similar to the people that I tend to attract for myself too. It's like people who are searching for more than just, making the horse do something, or getting a score at a show or this or that. They want the connection. It's a lifelong art form rather than just, trying to fix something. So
Yeah.
I think it's great. I loved it.
Cool. And speaking of community, so you were sharing with me that you're building quite a community in a Facebook group around musical freestyles, which is really cool because it's sort of there's a lot of people who only want to compete so that they can do the musical freestyle, right? It's like that's the fun part. And for people who are really, more competitive minded, it's a new challenge. I mean, it's something you can compete at. So I think it's a really cool place for you to be, because you can sort of bring a couple of different worlds together. And so you've been doing that. You've got a pretty nice big active Facebook group around it, and you've got some resources around musical freestyle. So yeah, maybe can you talk a little bit about why somebody might want to do a musical freestyle, and and then how to how to do it, because it's not so easy.
No, no, it's not so easy. Yeah, I had a lot of experience doing my own competition freestyles, but then also, my passion is really the exhibition and performing. But really, the process is the same. It's just in competition, you just have more parameters to work around with the required movements. Exhibition, you have a little bit more freedom, in costumes, creating a story and stuff. But it's like the elements of it are very similar, creating the choreography and like editing your music and matching the music to the horse and all those basics. Like people, I'm not like, I'm not an Olympic award-winning freestyle designer, but everybody would always say to me, like, I just don't know what to do. I'm so overwhelmed and I need some help. And I would try to find things online and I just really didn't find a whole lot. So I started doing little ebooks on like choreography for different levels and like creating these little downloads and stuff. And then, and I wrote a book, like it's with the same, I think it's with the same publisher you have, or is a freestyle. And you can get on Amazon or on my website, and it kind of goes through the whole process. And then I have a whole section for exhibition, and people can learn to ride to music like in a better way, to just for fun, just training. It doesn't even have to be for a competition or for performance. So I kind of cover all those things and just kind of have fun with it. And then the freestyle group, it's a free Facebook group, and I've started doing like lives and answering questions, and we have different topics, and I'll start doing interviews, and just it's really fun. Everybody's super helpful, ask tons of questions, and you learn a lot, and you can post videos and people will give you feedback. So it's a really great community. It's very positive, and so I'm continuously creating things. I'm trying to create an online course. It'll take a little while, but I'm working on it because I know people really want it. So so yeah, if you're in the Facebook group, you'll get access to, to me and asking questions and just getting inspired, I think is a lot of fun. So I'm sure Karen will include all the links in the show
Yeah.
notes for you.
Yeah, we'll put everything in the show notes. Is what's the name of the group, just in case someone's listening and they'll forget to go back and look at the show notes? Is it easy to find on Facebook?
Yeah, it's Create a Dressage Musical Freestyle.
That's
And
a
that's
good name.
it. Yeah, easy.
Very clear. Smart.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a great idea because I think like you mentioned before, there's so many people who have a secret wish, right? It's like, oh, I always would like to do something like that. But just like you, sometimes it can sit there for years and years because you don't know what the first step is, right?
Yeah.
Or you're just sometimes it's nice to be in the group and like see what somebody else did and get ideas, or just know like, well, where do you start? Do you start with the choreography? Do you start the music? Do you start? And it's so nice to have a resource to help people get started. And then once you're in it, there's a lot of decisions like, well, which music is better for this horse? Like this music or this music? And wouldn't it be nice to have somewhere to go to, get some feedback on that?
Yeah, for sure. It's a lot of fun. And that's I kind of cover that like first step DIY aspect of it. And then, when people get the hang of it, they can create, more advanced freestyles, or like they'll create their own, like maybe they make a training level freestyle and then the next year they're all set and they can make their own first level freestyle. And it's kind of like just learning the skills that take them into the future. But I love helping people that are like, I don't know what to do, the first steps. And that's what my book is helpful for. And I have blog posts on everything. And so that's basically that I like be the freestyle like DIY girl is what I like to do.
Oh, that is awesome. Oh, well, where else can people find you or learn more about you, Sandra?
Yeah, they can find me. I'm on Instagram. It's under my name, Sandra Beaulieu .official. And then I'm on TikTok, especially with the art videos. Like if you want to see those, I'm Sandra Beaulieu .artist on TikTok. And then I do have, I'm on Facebook, and my website is beginthedance.com, and it has all the stuff and the links to the, blog and ebooks and the painting course, and all sorts of information is on my website as well. So pretty easy to find if you just type my name in, but you have to type it in correctly because it's got weird spelling. So
Yeah, so make sure you check the show notes for the spelling of the name. While it's in the title here, it'll be in the title of this podcast, so we'll make it easy to find. Yeah, I admit, I still have to look twice.
I know. It's weird. It's weird.
But I've got a funny name. People
And
always
I'm happy, like, if people send me DMs on anything, I do on my own social media, so you can just send me a message and say hi. It's no, just reach out. It's no big deal. And, if you have questions or anything, that'd be great.
That's awesome. So Sandra, if you could have a billboard and have a message to the world and put it on a billboard, or maybe for you some neon lights, or I don't know, skywriting, something more creative than a billboard. What would you? And I didn't ask you this ahead of time, so I'm putting her on the spot here. It doesn't have to be a perfectly crafted sentence, but it's a big billboard.
Yeah.
What's your message? What's your message to people?
I think a lot of it is what we were talking about, the creativity, but like, tapping into your intuition as best you can. And that's like shedding the layers and going a little deeper, and letting your horse help you, like using your horse as your way of connecting with yourself. We all think our horses are our therapists, and they really are. It's like, I think like just taking away the stress of like, I'm not good enough or feeling overwhelmed, like just let the horse be your safe space of like, even if all you do is go in the stall and you just are reflecting, feeling what you feel and your energy and journaling and things like that. Like that's always very helpful. And it also helps with everything we talked about. So I think, the horse really is a mirror for you, and it's a way for you to, it's a journey, it's not just a goal. It's like, it's a relationship, it's like with your horse, it's like being married, Maybe I feel like you gotta work at it, but you also have to, be your own self and
Yeah, but worth it. And when you, for anybody who gets to see Sandra with her horses, what you just said is super clear, that you live that. I mean, the connection you have with your horse that I saw in person was just unmistakable, and it's just so nice to see that. That there's other people out there having
yeah
that kind of hopefully healthy relationship
right?
with a horse. Yeah, it's kind of what I live for, and it's what gets me up every day. And it seems the same for you. So super fun
Trying to be the same behind closed doors as you are in public. Like there's nothing like, there's nothing you're hiding. Trying to be yourself. Even if you're not doing a good job, but just being able to recognize, like, I'm not there yet, I'm okay with it. It's not, like you can make apologies or whatever, or you can explain yourself, but just being okay with that. It doesn't have to be always perfect. You just do your best and be happy with it and try to connect with the right people, and it'll all work out in the end.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we'll have to have you back on here again in the future.
Yeah. When we get you to do your photo shoot with the costume.
Oh, Sandra knows that I have a little thing of, I have costume resistance.
Yeah.
However, I might be starting to reform, because the other thing that Sandra does is these like fantasy photo shoots, right? She has this like billowy stuff blowing in the wind, and the lighting and I have to admit, part of most of me is like, yeah, whatever. But lately I'm like, maybe I would like to be pretty. Wear the
we need to
try that. So if that ever happens, if Sandra ever gets me in a costume and allow her to point a camera at me, you guys will see it. But
and then we'll talk about it.
oh my goodness, yeah. For that, I'll share a little inside secret. For the Iberian showcase, Tina, who she was one of the visionaries for it and the organizers, she had this song picked out for me, and she's like, and we could dress you up as a forest nymph, and I'll give you a bodysuit, like a nude colored bodysuit, and then we'll sew leaves onto it. And I went, there's no way in hell. There's no way I'm going to be a forest nymph in a bodysuit with leaves. And that's what I went, oh, Tina, here's a song that I really like. Can I just ride to this one and wear like breeches? So as long as you don't, get too crazy.
Yeah. No, I was just thinking like, a pretty dress and a skirt and, like something kind of cool going on, you could even wear a wig if you want to. That's always fun.
Okay. Someday here's my promise. I'll let you, I'll play with you one day. If you can put up with me, I'll play with you one day with.
We should try something with like, if you have horses that can go at liberty together, like, just kind of naturally, it would be really cool to do something like almost slightly like medieval or like natural, kind of how you would be in like, was it sort of Scandinavian type, like something that's like earthy, but also
like in a bodysuit with leaves sewn on?
Not that earthy.
Oh, okay.
Like lots of clothing, but maybe like a corset and a cool like dress, and then like, but have it be very, kind of sweet, and you're moving around with the horses and not like posed. It's more of like natural and having the horses moving with you, and we could do
okay. Well, I'll trust your vision. I definitely could use some help in this department. Every time I'm standing next to Sandra, I'm like, she's so pretty, and oops, I forgot to tuck in my shirt. Oh my goodness. All right. One day we shall play together.
Yes, that'll be fun.
All right. Thank you again. We'll see you next time.
I'll talk to you soon. Thank you.